The girl with the wild red hair tossed the book onto the table, sending a shiver down Clara's spine. She watched the worn leather hit the wood, its impact echoing strangely in the silent room. "What's the matter?" Clara asked softly, reaching out a hand to touch the girl's arm. The girl shook her head, brushing away Clara's hand, her eyes distant. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought you would help me find the answer, but all this book does is ask questions." Clara, ever patient and wise, smiled knowingly. She understood the turbulent emotions swirling within her young student, her granddaughter Alara. For Alara wasn't just grappling with the complexities of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy. She was facing the echoes of her own past, her own journey of confronting an increasingly godless world. You see, Elara's grandmother, the woman from whom Elara inherited her fiery hair, had lived a life deeply intertwined with the changing times. When she was young, religion played a central role in her life. Back in her village, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering wheat fields, everything revolved around faith. Every sunrise and sunset was a prayer, every harvest a hymn. The villagers, bound by centuries of tradition, took comfort in the known, the predictable rhythms of life guided by divine wisdom. But as the world evolved, as progress marched inexorably forward, Elara's grandmother, whom everyone called Elara, felt the stirrings of something new, something unsettling. The walls of the village, once symbols of protection, now seemed like prison bars. The familiar rituals, once sources of strength, now felt like chains binding her spirit. When a devastating famine struck, testing the limits of human endurance, the villagers turned to prayer, yet the heavens remained silent. Crop yields plummeted, livestock perished, and despair seeped into every home. All around her, Elara's grandmother witnessed suffering, the likes of which tore at her young heart. As children fell victim to hunger and disease, she questioned the benevolence of a God who seemingly ignored their plight. And when the village elder, a man revered as a conduit to the divine, failed to offer solutions or comfort, a monumental shift occurred within her. The unshakable pillars of her faith began to crumble. That's when she began venturing beyond the confines of her village, seeking answers in the wider world. In the bustling city, she encountered ideas and experiences that challenged her deeply held beliefs. Books became her solace, offering perspectives that resonated with her evolving thoughts. She devoured tales of scientific discoveries and philosophical musings, each page expanding her understanding of the universe and her place within it. She immersed herself in the vast ocean of human knowledge. She grappled with existential questions that had never crossed her mind before. What was the meaning of life if not ordained by a divine plan? How could she forge her own path without the guidance of religious doctrine? And how could she reconcile the goodness she saw in the world with the pain and suffering she also witnessed? Her journey was not easy. It was a tightrope walk between tradition and change, between faith and doubt. There were moments when the burden of her newfound freedom threatened to crush her. Days when the enormity of carving her own path seemed like a burden too heavy to bear. But with each passing year, she grew stronger, more resolute. She found purpose in teaching, dedicating her life to nurturing young minds and instilling in them the values she had discovered on her own path. Empathy, critical thinking, and a deep respect for the complexity of the human experience became her guiding lights. Her students, sensing her passion and conviction, flocked to her, drawn to the depth of understanding that shone in her eyes. Through them, she saw the future, a generation less tethered to tradition and more focused on personal growth and societal progress. With each smile from a student, each illuminating conversation, she celebrated the progress she had made, not just for herself, but for those around her. But like any profound journey, Elara's grandmother's path was not devoid of critics. The villagers who had once revered her as a pillar of the community now viewed her with suspicion. Her questioning nature and progressive views were seen as threats to the age-old fabric of their society. The whispers started subtly, then grew louder. She's abandoned our ways. She's embraced the godless ideas of the city. She's lost her way. But Elara's grandmother pressed on, her steps unwavering. She knew that while some might not understand her journey, many others were silently cheering her on. As the years rolled by, Elara's grandmother's influence expanded. She became a beacon for women who yearned for education, for for children who craved exposure to the world beyond their village, and for anyone who dared to question the status quo. Her life, once confined by religious boundaries, now stretched far and wide, touching countless lives and inspiring profound change. And now, here she was, years later, watching her own granddaughter grapple with the same issues that had once shaken her. Clara knew that Alara was not merely battling with Nietzsche's philosophy, but with the implications it held for her own life, her own faith. It was a battle Clara had fought too, and understood intimately. Nietzsche makes us confront the void, Clara began, her voice soft yet steady, echoing the wisdom of her years. He challenges us to accept that there may not be all the answers we seek, that some questions might go unanswered, that some truths might be inherently subjective. Lara looked up, her eyes searching her grandmother's face. "But isn't that terrifying?" she whispered, her voice laced with fear. "If there are no absolute answers, no clear path, how can we navigate life? How can we make sense of anything?" Clara smiled, reaching out to gently touch Alara's hand. "It's terrifying, yes," she admitted, "but it's also the most exhilarating thing I've ever experienced. You see, my dear Alara, in that void, in that absence of predefined answers, lies our greatest freedom, our greatest opportunity for growth. It's in the uncertainty that we learn to define ourselves, to create our own meaning." Alara frowned, still grappling with the concept. "But how can we create meaning in a meaningless universe? How can we forge a path without a map?" "By looking inward," Clara replied, her eyes twinkling with understanding. "We must confront the darkness, the uncertainty, and choose to create our own light." Nietzsche calls it becoming Übermensch, not in the sense of a master race, but as individuals who have recognized the death of absolute truth and have chosen to create their own values, their own purposes, their own meaning. Alara pondered this, the gravity of her grandmother's words sinking in. Slowly, a flicker of understanding, a glimmer of acceptance began to dawn on her face. "So," Alara finally whispered, "it's about embracing the chaos, accepting that life has no inherent meaning and finding meaning in the very act of living, of experiencing the world on our own terms, of creating our own truths." Clara nodded, her lips curving into a gentle smile. "Precisely, my dear. It's about recognizing that the death of God doesn't mean the death of everything, but the birth of everything. The birth of our own autonomy, our own creativity, our own capacity for self-creation." Alara sat in silence for a moment, digesting the profound implications of her grandmother's words. She felt as though a heavy fog had been lifted, revealing a world both terrifying and exhilarating in its vast openness. As the last rays of sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the room, Alara spoke again, her voice quieter but firmer than before. "I still have much to think about, much to process. But for now, I feel as though I'm beginning to understand. The death of God isn't about despair, but about empowerment. It's about recognizing the responsibility and the privilege we have in